Okay, peace, salam, shalom, and welcome back to the spring 2022 session of Interfaith Explorations, actually summer session. It's a program of the Interfaith Center. Our mission is to reduce the fear and hatred among people of different world religions. My name is Sophia Saeed. I'm the executive director of the Interfaith Center and host of this class every Wednesday at noon. Along with me is Dr. J. McDaniel, author, theologian, dear friend, professor who taught world religions for over 30 years at Hendrix College, and our beloved teacher in this class of Interfaith Explorations. We also have Lois Smythe with us, who is the administrator at the Interfaith Center and also our technology coordinator. So as you all know, we are focusing on film and spirituality in this session. And we do normally two films every time, but this session we are focusing on only one movie because we have a special guest and we want to make sure that she has enough time to share her story. So our movie today is called Women of the White Buffalo. And a little bit about our movie. It's a synopsis of a native matriarchal society which has been upended by centuries of genocide and colonialism. And the movie features stories of 9 women. They're 9 Lakota women who are living on Pine Ridge and Rosebud Indian reservations in South Dakota. And the movie shares their rising against the forces which continue to suppress them. It talks about their struggles. It shares their stories. And we are so lucky and fortunate that we have one of those 9 women today with us today. Her name is Sunrose Iron Shell. And before we go to Sunrose, I want to share a little bit more about the movie and show a clip from the movie that Sunrose will share from her screen. And after we do the clip, then we'll go towards the introduction of Sunrose. So if you have not seen the movie, you would truly enjoy this clip. So Sunrose, if we can start it right from the beginning and if you can go full screen and play it. Can you make it louder, Sunrose?
Okay, I have it turned all the way up.
Would you mind stop sharing your screen for 1 second? And when you share it again, there are 2 buttons on the bottom. One says optimize for video. Can you press both of those buttons?
Okay.
Perfect.
Oh yes.
Yeah, no problem.
How's that?
Fixed it.
During the winter months, 2 warriors were out east of the Black Hills looking for buffalo when they encountered a beautiful woman dressed in white buckskin. One man had impure thoughts about her. The other recognized her as a sacred being. The one who had impure thoughts approached her and thought he could take her and do what he wanted. But as he reached out for her, a cloud enveloped them both, and when the cloud lifted, the man was lying upon the earth as a skeleton. At the place where his stomach had been was a ball of snakes. She then instructed the other man to return to his village and prepare a place, as she was bringing something for the people. When the village had done what she had instructed, it is said that she approached the encampment and was singing a song that said, "With visible breath, I approached this buffalo nation." The Creator had given the gift of the sacred pipe to this starving nation, and the white buffalo calf woman told them to utilize the sacred pipe in all 7 of their ceremonies. as now they had the ability to speak directly with the Creator. When she completed her instructions to the people, it is said that she rolled to the earth several times, transforming into a mature black female buffalo, then turned into a red female buffalo, then into an adolescent yellow female buffalo, and finally into a white female buffalo calf. And then she disappeared.
Thank you, Sunrose. Thank you very much. I think this story speaks to all the women who were featured in this movie very beautifully, and their spirit and their struggles. So with this, I want to give it to Louis, because I don't know if you all know, before Louis came to us, he was in South Dakota, and he taught at St. Francis Indian School, and he is friends with Sunrose. So I want Louis to introduce Sunrose to us. Go ahead, Louis.
Thank you so much. So yes, Sunrose and I are friends. We were actually neighbors when we both lived up on the Rosebud Reservation teaching at Owl Bonnet School or St. Francis Indian School. I'm going to go ahead and introduce her. Sunrose Ironshell is a contemporary Indian artist. She breaks the stereotypes of what America wants Native art to be. She's an independent curator, poet, and fashion entrepreneur. In 2012, she earned 2 bachelor degrees from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She also received awards from the Southwestern Indian Art Market in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and HISAPA Designer of the Year in Black Hills, South Dakota. Sunrose Ironshell is Sicangu and Oglala Lakota of the Titawan Band of the Ochedishakoan, the 7 council fires known to the world as the Sioux Nation. As a ledger artist, she takes the traditional form of documentation and reflects a narrative of how contemporary indigenous people are living through the time of the Black Snake. #Miniwachoni. Her art gives life back to the old stories by documenting Ochedishakoe natural icons. Sunrose has been featured in the documentary film Women of the White Buffalo and has contributed to its social media pages and hosts a live feed every Sunday at Women of the White Buffalo.
Well, thank you, Louis. I'm already kind of emotional. I also, in my introduction, I am very lucky and I'm very blessed because my mom broke the chain, like, because I have come to some realizations that if my mom in the 70s, when the Indian Religious Freedom Act came out, so 1978, when we were actually allowed to pray and practice our religion, and that's only been 42 years. So 42 years in the United States have been this renaissance of indigeneity. And I was born in 87. And so my mom went to college and got her master's degree in religion at the Iliff School of Theology in Colorado. And I really have to thank her and give her flowers for making those decisions and making those choices to keep me around the circle, to keep me in ceremonies. And so I was raised really within our religion and really knowing our histories and our Chinoopa ways, from White Buffalo Calf, Pipe Woman. And I was raised in this academic setting and around the time when the Black Panthers and then the American Indian movement came around. So the flavor that I come with is always of kind of an in your face from this academic activism. And so when I went to the reservation, well, I'll back up a little bit, like, because I was raised as an Indian, I thought everybody was raised that way. I thought everybody was raised around their ceremonies, knowing the songs, knowing the white buffalo calf woman's story of the origin story, and then being able to pray the way we do. And I went back to the reservation to really learn my language, to try to learn from others. But when I went there, I understood that like not everybody has been able to be blessed to live that way. And so we are coming out of genocide, right? We're coming out of all these traumatic things that we didn't even realize ourselves. We were engulfed in so much trauma. Now, my life may not have been so traumatized, like in this day to day, like all the abuse and substance abuse, because it's really hard to know the histories of our people and then to also be expected to still play in this system. So it was set up, the boarding school, for example, so Lewis says, I'm not gonna bring it up, but I brought it up. The boarding school was actually a way to assimilate us. And so now we're assimilated. We're 3 really good generations into being assimilated and living in this system, and then still not fully gaining what America says we can gain by living this way, because we are engulfed in historical traumas. So once like a person becomes healthy, knowing all these traumas, maybe they don't do substance abuse anymore, then, you know, they quit drinking, because that's our #1 stereotype. And growing up, because I was in that academic world, I chose not to drink. A lot of the times, I'm from Denver, so I was born in Denver and raised in the city. Whenever I met somebody who was like my age or a teenager, because it was never really adult, but when I met them, they're like, oh wow, you drink? Let's go drink. And then right away they wanted me to go party. And I was like, wait, no, like just because you think I'm a partier, just based off my ethnicity, I'm gonna choose not to drink. And so I've never had a drop of alcohol in my life. And in some people's minds, that's just like unheard of, because we're all Indian drunks. You know, they used to give us whiskey in our handouts, in our commodities. So you'd get the flour, you'd get your corn syrup, and you'd get the potted meat, and then you get jars of whiskey. So the government did really a good job at like trying to do all these bad things to us. And then we're still here. So we're still trying to navigate through how do we be able to be a cultural person, but then also live in this assimilated world where we're expected to go to school and go to all these academic places that don't teach about us, that don't give light to our identity. So when I came to the reservation, I was like, you know what? Everything I do in my classroom is going to be all about Indigenous people. So I always taught about the current Indigenous artists, and sometimes, you know, they're high school students and they'd be like, this isn't a history class, it's an art class. I was like, well, an artist in our world as a cultural person, they have the most power. They're the leaders. They're supposed to reflect the nation, the state of the nation, and inspire others. And so we do have to know all of these histories. And so that's a little bit of my background. I have been emotional these past few days because Deb Holland did she is doing an investigation on all the boarding schools. And I have to really look at myself, because when you're born and you kind of grow up, you always wonder, like, what happened? Like, what happened to my people? Like, what happened to my mom and my grandma? Like, why aren't we connected? Why don't we know these tribal ways? And then it all comes back to the boarding school. The boarding school system really broke us, and it really broke my family. And some of my cousins are like perfect examples of assimilation. where they don't know their language, but they have a job, they have a house, they have a mortgage. They're like perfect Americans, but their whole self-identity is gone. And then I don't have any of those things. I don't have, all of what America, like the house, the land, a good job, but I have everything cultural, because I've made it my kind of life's goal to very be cultural. So I have to give it up to my mom for breaking the cycles.
Sunrose, are you stopping here and like us to start Q&A? Okay, so Lois, I'm thinking that we do have time, and before Jay starts, I think we should show the trailer of the movie. So if you can screen share and show the trailer before Jay starts with the discussion.
Absolutely.
If you haven't
I will-
seen the movie, it would be really helpful.
All right.
The Great Spirit, the Four Directions, and the Mother Earth, all our ancestor spirits, the White Buffalo Calf Woman, thank you for the gift of who we are.
When you step onto our land, you're no longer in the United States. You're in Lakota territory.
Helping our people, learning who they are, using those things that we still have before we lose them. That's our responsibility.
You haven't learned all of our cultural ways until you've learned understanding our values, our true spiritual ways.
We heal through conversation, we heal through connection, we heal through our culture. The solution is going to come from hearts of the women coming together to heal.
We need to call the spirit of our children back. Tiwahe Yagaloa Inkte, you are going to take your generation forward.
I'm a Native American Lakota woman. I'm a strong woman, and I found myself through my culture, through my family, through the children. We have a choice. It's up to you.
Sunrose, I'll take it from here and facilitate a conversation. But first, I'd like for you to know that I taught briefly at Iliff Seminary, where your mom went. Yes.
Awesome.
Taught in the 70s, and so anyway, who knows? When did she go there? Do you know roughly?
Oh, maybe like in the 91, 90.
Okay, well, she's much younger than me, and was there later, but I know that world fairly well. And anyway, it's great to be with you now. I know that many of us here would like to hear a little bit or a lot about how you practice your religion, and also how it's linked with your art. I think we'd like to hear a little bit about your art as well, and how those are woven together, and how you became an artist, how you discovered that side of yourself. So could you start with religion, turn to art, and just say anything you want to say, and we'll like it.
All right. So I'm a Chanupa carrier, and our Chanupa is the pipe, and which is all about fertility. The White Buffalo Calf Woman came and gave us the Chanupa, which was the elbow and calf part of the knee, of the buffalo. And so the actual kneecap would have been the tobacco bowl part, and then the bone. So the first one was created not by any man-made. It was by this spiritual entity, white buffalo calf woman, who I know across the world, people have interpreted that as to be like a saint or like a goddess. But for us, she's our prophet. She's a prophet who came, brought us the 7 sacred ceremonies. And so the first one is like a naming ceremony. So while I was being born, I was born as the sun rose. So my name, it kind of really all starts with the name for me. That the timing of how it happened. I was in this high-rise building and the sun came in, so I was born as the sun rose. So Sun Rose Iron Shell is my legal name. And then after a while, after like 3 months, I'm given a Lakota name, which would be my spiritual name. I say, "Midakuye pi tate dopa na jiwi ai makiapi." My Lakota name stands for Directions Woman, or the 4 winds stand with her. And so as a young person, I was like, wow, that is a heavy name to live up to. So I always wanted to live up to that name. So I got my Lakota name, which is a part of our 7 sacred rites. So naming, coming of age, doing the sweat lodge ceremony, which is a cleansing ceremony, and then the vision quest, leading on to sun dancing, creating a relative, making a new relative, the hunka or adoption ceremony, keeping the spirit, which would be when someone dies, you cut a piece of their hair and you put it in a bundle, and for the whole year while you're grieving, you are talking to that bundle if it's that person, and that's your spiritual connection to the next side. Also in our birthing ceremonies, we will take the placenta and bury it under a tree. And so then our people, our human nature, we always have that earth connected with our blood. One of the sayings that always gets me is, your blood is in this earth and this earth is in our blood. So there's all these different terms of Indian, Native American, Indian, First Nations, Aboriginal. Out of all of those terms, indigenous is the one that really, really speaks to me, like in the dictionary version, is because indigenous means they came from that land. And it always refers to the plants and the animals. Like it never refers to the human beings. But when you talk to indigenous people, their whole creation story comes from the land. So being birthed from the land. And now like we also say that we didn't like become human beings right away either. There's this different storylines that we have. So before White Buffalo Calf Woman, we had like this buffalo culture coming from the buffalo. There was other ancient like spirits that were around. It's like, of course, the moon, the stars, having those spiritual entities, and then like pulling them down to turn them into characters for the oral histories. And so the planet being Mother Earth, and then the sun, the moon, we lived in this submergence era, which I've coined that term because for me, we've lived underground. And underground, that could mean a lot of things. That could mean that we are the mycelia from the mushrooms and kind of connected to the earth on a whole different level, and then somehow evolved into buffalo, which then, evolved into humans. And then we have this another creation story where we come out of a cave. We come out of wind cave, we come out of Badote as human beings, enticed by these spirits who were lonely on the surface. And that would be double face woman, like double, like 2. So half of her face is a old woman, and then the other half is a young lady. And she also reminds me of the goddess Kali in Hindu, where she was creation and destruction. So she brings artistry, and then she brings the destructiveness. And so as an artist, I always sought out that knowledge, and I would ask my elders, can you tell me more about Double Woman Dreamer, Anuki Tewia? Can you tell me more about her? Because as an artist, I know there's songs for our colors. There's songs to sing to the colors. There's songs to sing to the porcupine quills, but I don't know any of those songs. It's like all this knowledge has been crumbled and destroyed, and we're like picking up pieces, a little bit of gold nugget here, a little bit here, and trying to make a way. So when somebody comes out, and like my aunties have really cool stories, I think they're cool. Because as a young person, I'm like, oh, cool, guns, like military, we're very militant, like you Black Panthers, protect yourself, American Indian movement, protect yourself. Because our I would say maybe your generation, when they went to ceremonies, when they had a sweat lodge ceremony, they would have the cousins or the young people with their AKs on a lookout for the FBI, because the FBI would come and pull you out of the ceremony mid-prayer. And a lot of our spiritual people went to the insane asylum, in different quantifying. If it was the medicine man, then boom, he like straight went into the insane asylum, straight jacket. And so you come from a generation where everybody had to be quiet about it. And so you didn't know when there was a sweat going on, because you couldn't tell anybody, because the cops would come get you, because it was deemed illegal. There's actually US policy that says no singing and dancing either. So 1978 comes, we have this reawakening, and I was really blessed to be a part of that. So now my spirituality, we have a sweat lodge ceremony, and I try to go to as much as I can, and that's the cleansing. So we have the rocks, the hot lava rocks that are the grandfathers that come in, and we pour cedar on them. Sometimes we put lavender, so you can breathe in all of the steam. Of course, it does get hot, because if it's not hot, then the spirits won't come in. They say there are 367 different spirits that come in and come help us. And when I went home to Rosebud, I went to a sweat lodge ceremony where they were all speaking in Lakota, and I'm not fluent. I don't know my language as much, but in that ceremony, I know my name, Pangeshka Maza, which is Iron Shell. And at the time I was 32. And so the ceremony man, he's speaking on behalf of the spirits that were called in to be interpreted. So the ceremony man is also called an interpreter. And so he interpreted the message. And there was 2 older spirits that came in. And as a little girl, I've been to ceremonies, and there's different levels. I believe that kids and everybody should always be in the circle. There shouldn't be a group of people in the circle and then all these kids are running around and the parents are just here. Because one time I did run around, and I was outside running around outside of the circle, and these 2 spirits appeared. And they were beautiful Lakota men with hair down to their knees in buckskin, and I ran into them. And I remember like feeling the buckskin and like feeling and like looking up in awe, and then they spoke to me in Lakota, and I didn't understand what they were saying, but later on I understand that everybody's supposed to stay close to the center of the circle, because there are bad spirits out there too. And when you call for energies to come, those energies might come as well. And they're always protected by the circle, so they don't come in. So basically those 2 spirits kind of have been showing up in my life. And when I looked into their eyes, his eyes were so deep that they were lightning bolts everywhere. Like if you look in the eyes, it turns into this whole world, and there's just lightning bolts everywhere. And in the other man, there were twirling clouds, like all these gray twirling clouds. So I knew, you know, at that moment, that was like kind of my moment where I was like, okay, this is real. Everything that I'm saying, everything about all this stuff is real. I believe it in my heart. Like I already believed it. And then when you have spiritual things come to you in those good ways, then you're okay, yep, I'm in it. Let me do all of this. I believe in the magic. Like I truly do believe that there's a recipe, and it's always a recipe. Like the sweat lodge is a recipe. And if you add your own ingredients, you're gonna channel certain things. So in the ceremony, when I came home, the spiritual man was talking, and those two spirits came and welcomed me home. And they said, you've been gone for a long time, and you're an iron shell, and we recognize your spirit, and we welcome you home. And so that for me was like, oh, that's it. Like, I believe in these ways. So I do carry my mother's chanupa, and I have been a sun dancer.
Really?
But like sun dancing is not an obligation.
Mhm.
It is only a decision that you make when you know you need to pray hard for some. So like now, most of the people always pray for world peace, because it was outlawed. Now that it came back, those are the little things that we have left to grasp onto. So instead of just walking as a Lakota person with those ideals, they walk as a sun dancer. So like the certain levels, and not everybody has to sun dance. And it's turned into something we do because that's all we got.
Mhm.
But sun dancing is only supposed to be a 4-year term. Everything is like in those sacred numbers of 4, in the sacred numbers of 7. So 7, and then the multiples of 7, being that.
Thank you. That's really interesting to me, and I'm sure to everybody. Let's open it up and see what thoughts or questions others have. I'm going to see if I can get a gallery view so I can see people. Anybody have a question you would like to ask Sunrose now, or a comment to make to get the conversation going still further? Let me ask a question. How many of you already kind of know what a Sundance is? Okay, so Sunrose, we've got some people that don't know what that looks like. I'm guessing most people know what a sweat lodge is, kind of. Even there. Okay. So if you could get a little more specific on, just give us a picture of what the Sundance looks like and what the sweat lodge looks like. That would spring us forward.
Okay. We are a star nation. So everything is connected to the star. So in a sweat lodge ceremony, usually it's kind of out in the country, but sometimes it's in the backyard of somebody's house. But you have a fireplace, and then a path between the fireplace and the sweat lodge dome. And it's a dome that's made out of willows. And there's some sacred geometry that happens, because when they put those willows together to bend them over to create the dome, when you look up, there's a star quilt there, or a star, a 6-pointed star. And so that's our connection to the spirit world, and also to the stars. And so when the fire is lit, that's when the ceremony starts. The fire is lit, there's rocks, there's lava rocks that get heated up, that get walked into the sweat lodge. Inside the sweat lodge is a small pit. And from that pit, they create the altar. So there's a fireplace, and then there's a mound of dirt, and then there's the sweat lodge. On the mound of dirt is where we would put our buffalo skull, or any kind of medicines, like maybe they might have a turtle rattle. They would fill their chanupa with the chinchasha. So we actually didn't do tobacco in our pipe, in our chanupa. I always refer to a chanupa because a pipe just sounds like it's like diminishing the sacredness. So chanupa, which means the the bark of the tree, and then two coming together. So the bowl is actually the female, and the stem gets put, into the bowl, and it's connected. And so first we would sing a song, fill the chanupa. I basically would take my little chinchasha root, which is the bark shavings of the dogwood, which is like the red dogwood. And I see it like all over, like in front of people's patios as like landscaping thing. Like they sell it at Home Depot and stuff. But that's one of our like most sacred things that we pray with. And when you need it to pray with, because that's the smoke that carries your prayers up. There's only a certain time you get that, and that's when the return of the thunders. So in April, when that first lightning bolt comes and it strikes the earth, it kind of reawakens everything. And then that chinchasha is like in its sacred moment, and then you harvest it then. So everything has to deal in the balance of the stars and the moon. So our word for health is wichoni, and we is the planet. So not only we're healthy within ourselves, like what food we eat, but you have to be healthy in the cosmologies around you. So you're healthy with the balance of the equinoxes and the solstice. So we don't really celebrate a lot of the holidays, but when the equinox comes, like spring solstice, we will make our prayer ties, and I'll fill my chanupa again, and we'll smudge off and kind of be reset.
So Sunrose, so we have the sweat lodge, and then we kind of move to the pipe for a minute. Is the pipe something you smoke? Do you pass it around one to another? And do you do that in the sweat lodge or outside the sweat lodge?
Inside the sweat lodge.
So you're sitting in the sweat lodge, and you're sitting, and there's these rocks, and it's really hot, and you're sweating, and you're passing the pipe. Tell me, go a little further there. Yeah.
So we'll all come in, and then those first 7 rocks come in, and they will actually touch the chanupa to those rocks, and those are all the cardinal directions. And then they speak on that. They call the 4 directions song, which actually is 7 directions, because we do above, below, and then yourself. And then they'll take that chanupa and they'll put it on the altar. So the chanupa actually sits outside on the altar, and then you close the door, sing some songs, do your prayers, cry it out. Maybe a spirit might come in and come talk to you through that ceremony man. Then they open the door, and then the first door closed is for the children. Then the second door closed is for the elders. And then the third door is for the yourself. And then the fourth door is your thanking, and then send them away. And then
how long would that last typically? An hour? I just don't have a sense of that.
It might be like 15 minutes.
The
doors actually close, and you maybe sing about 3 or 4 songs. So it's like little, maybe for 5 minutes you might be in that heat, and it's like the steam. I always like put my towel over my head, but then I like to sing, so like my towel is covering me, and then just my voice is there, and then I'm able to sing, and the song really gets me through it. And I realized that you have to have that mindset of you're in a dark area, you're in a real close space. It's real tight because it's supposed to remind your spirit of being in the womb. You're in Mother Earth's womb. And so when I take care of my cousin's kid, and he's 6, and so he wasn't like introduced to the sweat lodge. So right away I thought he was gonna flip out, but really he was like kicked back. He was like loving it. He was like loving it, because it is like kind of like a sauna. It's definitely like a sauna. And whoever's pouring the water, they're taking a buffalo horn, and it's just like a big plastic bucket, like the construction buckets full of water, but then the water will be some cedar or like lavender. Sometimes they'll do peppermint, but they're pouring that on the water and you're breathing it in, and you gotta work up to it. Your breath has to work up to, so there's a lot like self-meditation
yeah.
going
And you're
on.
certainly taking us there. We're inside the sweat lodge right now with you.
So every breath it gets warmer, and then every scoop of water that gets up there, the steam rises up, and then it goes to the dome and it comes down. So then you're engulfed and you feel that steam. You feel it hit your face, and then you feel it go down your back, and it's cleansing.
Great. Okay. So
Yeah.
now we do have some more questions, and let's get those out on the table. I think Lillian, you had one. You wanted to know about education for children. And let's get some questions in front of us, and then you can respond to several at the same time. Lillian's interested in education for children. Anybody else have just a question you hope gets addressed before our time's up? Anybody? Ellen.
My understanding is that the native languages are oral. There's an oral tradition, not necessarily written tradition. And so I find it so fascinating that with all of the history and the wanting to squash that education, that these stories are still centuries later known. So my question is, how is that? How did that happen? And is that now, if I'm correct in that it's not written, is that now being written? And is that what the art and music is for, to document all of that?
I would definitely have to say it's like by the grace of God. I honestly don't know how we survived. I don't even know how I survived. Like I am an anomaly, because everything was just so anti. You know, in the boarding school system, they coined the term "save the man and kill the Indian." Kill the Indian and save the man. So basically, kill everything Indian about us. Take away all that spiritualness. Take away all that kind of common sense knowledge as well about the earth. And so I would have to say there were some grandmas, there was some aunts and uncles who didn't go to boarding school, who then had more kids and then still spoke, and they were absolutely cherished and kept valuable, right? If everybody's hunting you, you would keep your most valuable knowledge possessors way in the back and kind of not talk about them. So I think that's how things survived too, is like some people were protected and then they were able to bring it back. So Fool's Crow is a ceremony man, healer man, who helped bring the American movement back. And those were all Indians who were in the city, who came to Pine Ridge and then were able to reclaim their culture. And after 1978, and that was also Reuben Snake, who helped them with that legislature, where we were able to pray again. And then people were able to stop coming into our ceremonies. But if we progress to like now, you know, now we still do ceremonies that the cops are still against, or they don't even understand. Like some of the cops I speak to don't even realize that there's a whole law, and it's called the Indian Religious Freedom Act, that gives us that right to pray. And we don't have access to our sacred sites anymore, but like Deb Holland is changing that with giving everybody access to the parks, because in all of the parks there are a lot of our sacred sites. And so I honestly don't know how we survived. I'd say like by the grace of God.
So Ellen, did you have a follow-up to that?
Well, I'm talking about generations and generations, because you may know in my brain, I'm making parallels between the Jewish story and the Native American story. And so I guess I'm seeing how there are many parallels, but also many differences in the way that things have been recorded or not recorded. And so That
Well, there were some, okay, so there are some great books. There's some authors, Neidhart. I will have to get to Lewis to maybe get you a list of books, but like at the time they were seen as what was the word? Like sellouts. Like an author would come to our village, you know, so in time, let me pre-boarding school, they would come to the reservation and take down all of the knowledge, write it all down. And so we have books as well that kind of take us back to that time and we're able to learn from. And then also some of it too is spiritual divine channeling and asking a question. Like my questions about the double woman dreamer, because she's the spirit of art. So I have to create a connection spiritually with her, because these are real entities that surround our religion. And so there's like circles, there's a bunch of circles that are broken, but we were able to get these little pieces. And so the author really helped.
Just to add a little to Ellen's, at least Ellen, this is how I think of it. I think that indigenous traditions the world over have been oral, and they've not been tied to written text. So things are passed down by word of mouth, by storytelling, and by ceremonies. And they continue the lineage quite independently of written texts. And that's one difference with Judaism, which also has its lineage, but it was a text-based tradition.
Yes.
So that would be one difference between Judaism and other indigenous traditions.
And I know, like, orally, you are meant to say it and not add or subtract. So like White Buffalo Calf Woman too, when she came and she brought the ceremony, she said nothing more, nothing less.
That's interesting.
You don't have to add to it and you don't have to take away from it. Everything is set up for you. And then also we had our hide counts, our winter counts, where one person in the Tuahe of, let's say, 70 families records their history throughout the whole year. So there are some really old hide winter counts, and there's one symbol that links them all together. So there have been academics who have studied those hide counts and then have linked that one account, and it's called the stars falling. So like a big, huge meteor shower. And we were able to look at the astronomy timeline. And there is a book called like Lakota Star Knowledge, which is actually Ocheti Shakoi Star Knowledge. But so we can date ourselves how far our religion goes back, because the way the earth wobbles and the way, you know, scientifically we're able to turn it all back and then be like, okay, so these constellations formed around these times. So that's about 7,000 years ago.
Yeah. So indigenous traditions are the oldest traditions, and the textual traditions are new kids on the block historically. We've got a couple more questions, Sunrose, and I want to make sure that they get out there. Lillian had asked about our children now being taught and raised in these traditions, and how does that occur? And then Tina asked the questions about boarding schools. Do they still exist? And I have a feeling that a lot of us here don't really know exactly what boarding schools were or are. So if you could say a word about each of those, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, so the boarding school is the military reaction to how to stop killing Indians. It's like, okay, well, we've killed them for so long, but now we still want to kill them. But so it's a military act, the boarding school. It wasn't out of generosity or let's teach the Indian. It was specifically set up to kill everything about the Indian. So we're really triggered by the education system and schooling, because it was set up that way for us to be the next wave of slaves. And so with Deb Haaland coming out about her investigation, there are a lot of good videos out there. And so I would say to go ahead and research about it yourselves, because it's a big can of worms. So the boarding schools, there's 406 of them within the United States. And they were given to the Catholic Church to basically be responsible for. And then it was the law. So the cops, the government would come into your home on the res and take your kid by force. So it was forcibly. It wasn't like we just sent our kids there. So it was by force. And then all this bad stuff happened, which being beaten for our language, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why I say, go ahead and research it, because right now it's being in national news. It's coming about.
So Sunrose, were the boarding schools on the reservations or away from the reservations?
Both, because the school me and Lewis worked out, St. Francis Indian School, was actually the second boarding school ever created. So the Colonel Pratt, he sent his sister to come to basically make that school in the image of Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania. And so with all this new research, and it's not new to us, because we knew children were dying. We knew that they were treating our kids bad, like not taking care of their tuberculosis or influenza, and basically letting others get that virus all over the school. So you have like whole schools that died. And then there's, because it's a Catholic institution, there might have been suicides that are on unmarked graves. So there was a bunch of deaths that happened as well. Not death like mentally, yes, death of the Indian, but then also like physically all of our children died. So there's unmarked graves being discovered, and that's why they're talking about it national.
So Tina, do you want to ask a follow-up to what she said so far? Unmute, yeah.
I've just seen some things, some documentary type things on, the boarding schools for Indian children. And apparently years ago, and I don't know if it's still like this, but it was just absolutely horrible. Shaving or cutting anyway, all their hair off, and not letting them speak in their native tongue. And of course, the things that you mentioned too, really negligence as far as their health and so forth. And I also heard, I guess it's fact, that a lot of these children were separated from their siblings. So there was like no real family connection. And unless the parents would come in the summertime, they would be there all year, mostly without seeing relatives, like parents. And I mean, that's just so abusive. I'm just hoping that still doesn't go on.
Thanks, Tina. And then Lillian asked the question about children, Sunrose. So 2-year-old, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, how today are they trained into, how do they learn about these traditions that are so important?
Just their own families.
Family.
In St. Francis, they have a lot of lip service. They say they're a tribal school. They say they want to be a cultural immersion school, but then we are stuck by the grasp of the state. So because we are state sanctioned, all of our money comes from the state, we have to uphold the state values. And so we put all culture on the back burner and we do all the state stuff. And so in order for a student, a youth to be in a school that is an Indian school, it has to be privately funded. And the Jewish schools, I'm always like so amazed. I've visited a few Jewish schools, one in Washington, D.C., where I was like, wow, you're speaking Hebrew? and you guys can still do the state stuff, but you're like speaking Hebrew. So like their first morning is like all Hebrew Jewish philosophy, and then they even have gender classes, and then they go and pray. All their food is kosher, and I'm like, yes. How can I like turn that into Lakota? Well, I gotta be a millionaire first. First, I gotta get some money so I can get some land. And so we're kind of all starting at ground zero, because the government, they give us lip service too, because we have a treaty. We have a treaty that says for every 30 students, they would build us a schoolhouse, and they would give us the money to raise our own school system. But yet it doesn't happen in real life. We're held back. So also reservations are held in trust. So the United States government is holding the deed for us. So at this point, I'm like, okay, well, when am I old enough? When am I knowledgeable enough where I can hold my own deed, where I can have my self-reliance and have that sovereignty. So we're still working on it. We still need schools built. There's state schools built, and you can go there for free. Actually, it's the law, right? You have to go to that school. But in order for us to have our own, there's a Alma's Freedom School in Pine Ridge, and they're totally private funded. And it's like really hard for them to actually keep going. And so I wish like one of those, like maybe the Jewish school could like partner up with us, and then they, I don't know, create a way. But I'm like so glad to see that it can happen. It can happen. We can have a cultural school because just Jewish schools are doing it.
Louis, we've got a couple more minutes, and would you like to say something to us or to Sunrose?
No, I'm really glad that Sunrose, you came on. It was I'm sure that I don't know how many people from this class can relate, but when I was watching the movie, as I told you earlier, I saw a lot of what I saw when I was in St. Francis, and it just made me absolutely weep. And I don't know, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. With our last couple minutes, I know that we did have the ending clip from Women of the White Buffalo that we did want to watch. Is there any way that you can still share your screen with us so we can see, maybe starting at that 120 mark?
Yeah, so if you go to before we play the clip, because Liz, you're going to stop the recording right after that. So I want to just say thank you to Louis first for bringing Sunrose to us and introducing us to this movie. And then also Sunrose, thank you so much for being here in our class today. And I speak on behalf of all of us, including myself, Jay, and all the participants, that it was really amazing to listen to you. Thank you for sharing your heart with us, your story with us. Thank you for shining your light on us, for sharing your spiritual tradition with us, which is so deeply connected to Earth. I feel you are our white buffalo calf woman, and we are so proud of you. I hope you'll consider coming back to our class again one day. So deepest gratitude to you. And with that, normally, Sunrose, I close with a poem, but I think the ending of the movie was so poem-like to me, and it was so full of hope. So if you go to 1 hour and 20 minutes and start playing from that, and I'll tell you when to stop.
Okay.
And thank you all. I'll see you next Wednesday. Make sure to share the computer sound.
All my relations.
$130 ago, Crazy Horse sat smoking the sacred pipe with Chief Sitting Bull 4 days before he was assassinated, and he said, "Upon suffering beyond suffering, the Red Nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world. A world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations. A world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life. and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day, there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity among all living things. And the young white ones will come to those of my people and ask for this wisdom. I salute the light within your eyes where the whole universe dwells. For when you are at that center within you, and I am in that place within me, we shall be as one.
Sunrose, is there any project that you would like to encourage us to follow up on in light of what you've said and shown us today?
On our website, womenofthewhitebuffalo.com. It's still going. Okay. So on our website, you can follow the stories of all of us. And one in particular is Mama Jules. So Jules Richard, she does the Mothers Against Meth Alliance. And right now she, in the video or in the movie, she didn't have her land, but now she's working on this project where she has 2 acres right now, where she's able to build a community where people can come and the children can come. That's kind of like a toxic free environment. And then she has like separate tiny homes that she's getting where people can detox. And so that would be like one of the project that's directly involving us, a part of the film. And then I, every Wednesday, I do a Native news, because in response to the film as well, it was like, well, we never hear about Indians. Like, can you tell us, can you just come on and tell us? And I'm like, well, I hear about Indians all the time. And it's the algorithms, these algorithms are against us. And I always am telling our director, I'm like, man, there's a spiritual bubble. And we're kept out of the spotlight. And if there's any like inclusion type of conversations, we're kept out of those. Any diversity tables, there's never an Indian at that seat. And so really it's like beginning with us, whenever we're in a capacity where there is inclusion, it's like up to everybody to be like, where's the Indian? Because there is an Indian that survived. Indian nations, like even like we're in Arkansas, we talked about the Caddo, me and Lewis talked about, the Caddo, they're all still alive. And what a great time to like kind of invite them, like, Caddo, I want you to come back to Arkansas, come do some ceremonies in Arkansas. Here's some space that's open and free to come stay, do your ceremonies. So there's things within our own circle that we can do. And so I always want people to start there within your own community and bringing indigenous people to the table. And then me, myself, I'm doing that Native news every Wednesday. Hopefully it'd be really cool to be like, get on Good Morning America, and do Native news, Indian country news for like 5 minutes, like 7 minutes. Let me get in there. Because there's a lot of things going on with fashion. There's some great like fashion designers, like this t-shirt I have on right now, the sublimation comes from an indigenous fashion designer. So and then there's indigenous other happy films going on. Like I want to recommend Rutherford Falls is a series that is like totally my life, because she goes off and she gets her degree to be in museum studies, and that's what I got my degree in, is museum studies. So Native news, and then every Sunday I also do interviews, and then my website is releasing soon, and that'll be sunroseironshow.com.
So Louis, you can get that information and send all of that to us in an email.
Yes, I will follow up with everyone in an email.
All right.
Louis, if you can send the link for this class recording to everybody, those who were
Yes.
not able to join, they would really enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Could I just ask one very quick question, and which is, you use the term Indian, I use the term Native American. What is the preferred term to use when we talk about you?
Indigenous. I like indigenous, but indigenous would be first, because that speaks of our connection to the land, because our whole religion boils down to the laws of the land, the Wo'ope. So if everybody, you know, went back to their own connections and their roots, and what dirt do you come from? What's the law of that dirt? You know, and then the health of Mother Earth. Indian, when Columbus coined that term, it was indios, those with God. So like my mother's generation, and she's in her 70s, they love that term, because it's like, yes, we are those with God. But then also you have a whole nother race of people that call themselves Indians, because there's a continent named India, but really at the time that Columbus landed, the continent was called Bahrain. And so we are the first Indians, but I don't want to like be a part of that controversy or anything like that. So I use indigenous. Whenever I use the term Indian, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking of the letter N and the letter D and then the letter N, NDN. But indios, those with God. So yeah, we like that term. And then Native American, the dictionary version of Native, that term is you're born in that country. So everybody here who's born as an American citizen, they're all Native Americans. One time we did a call out at my college university, University of Colorado in Denver, and I invited all of the Native American students to come for a dinner. And 80% of that population that showed up were all Asian Americans. So it is true that anybody born, like if you're born in Arkansas, you're a native Arkansas. You know, if you're, yeah, so Native American doesn't really work, the dictionary definition, but then indigenous, number one, Indian, number two, Native American, third, First Nations is more Canada, and then Aboriginal definitely is more Australia and New Zealand, and then the Islanders, but everybody's indigenous. So then it refers to the tribalism too. So then being Lakota.
Thank you.
That was really helpful. Thank you, Sunrose, for giving us that 101.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening.
You know, nobody wants this class to end.
Yeah.